All right, well, we can go ahead and get started. So, for everybody watching, my name is Dr. Johnny Mae Morgan, and I'm excited that you guys are here as we kick off this series designed especially for kindergarten through eighth grade families, their caregivers, and educators who want to plant the seeds of possibility around the idea of college without all the pressure and overwhelm. So, today's workshop is all about introducing the concept of college in a way that feels natural, fun, and developmentally appropriate for younger students. So we're going to talk about how to spark curiosity, create small learning moments at home, as well as keeping the conversation balanced and supportive, because college is just one of the many pathways available after high school. And I'm also thrilled to be joined by a very special guest. This is Tiara Temple. She's the Assistant Director of Recruitment at Texas A&M University here in DFW. And she brings not only a wealth of experience in college access and recruitment, but also a heart for helping families from all backgrounds feel seen, supported, and kind of informed as they explore educational opportunities for children. So Tiara will be here sharing some fantastic insights on what she's experienced when talking with younger students about college, how families can build exposure over time, and how to keep the process uplifting rather than stressful. So whether you're wondering where to start or how to answer your child's questions, she'll offer some practical advice and encouragement that you can take with you today. So I want to jump in and explore how exactly do we introduce college in a way that builds curiosity and confidence from elementary to middle school and beyond. So many people, when we begin this conversation, they're always wondering, isn't it too early? But not at all. Think of it like teaching your child to save money, not because they're buying a house tomorrow, but to build awareness and healthy habits. So the same goes for planting those seeds about college and learning after high school. So the goal here today isn't pressure, it's exposure. So we want to make those conversations about college a normal part of everyday life. So when we help children grow with a sense of possibility and confidence about their future. So I guess I will kind of open it up with a question for you, Tiria. How would you describe college to a young child, say second or third grader?
Is an extension and an opportunity to continue to really just kind of path. When we think about that undergraduate level, which is truly where we hear, most students achieving their bachelor's degrees, I kind of remind them that it's just an extension of our education. So it's not quite 13th and 14th grade continuing on past 12th grade, but it is just the opportunity to continue to learn a little bit more, but also the opportunity to hone in on something very specific that they're wanting to do. I also explain it that it could possibly just be a pathway to get you to the career path that you're wanting to go to. So if you want to be a doctor, then that's great. College is just one way that we can help kind of get you moving towards that direction in that field. So that's one of the easiest ways to kind of keep it light without overwhelming them and stressing them out when we're thinking about, those younger students just kind of extending past high school and just really kind of reminding them that essentially college is still school. It's just there's there's some things that are just different. We pay now for college for many of us and some of us we're now paying for it, unlike usually when we're thinking about K through 8, specifically like that K through 12 market. So there are a few differences depending on possibly that child's comprehension level, even just their interest, what families can continue to go a little bit deeper into it. But the easiest way to just describe it is just kind of keep it light, keep it fun. It's school, it's more school, but there's a lot more freedom with it. So because your student would have the opportunity to live on their own, kind of create their own schedule, we tend to see that younger students kind of light up whenever they hear about extra freedoms.
Oh, that sounds actually great. That extra freedoms is the part that I specifically love. So I want to get just slightly personal, but not too much because this is a public live. But what would you say is one memory or moment from your own college experience that you think would be exciting or interesting to a child?
Hmm. I think pretty much when I think about college as a whole, it just is my entire experience. I was a first generation college student, so I had no idea what to do. So sometimes, depending on the family and that situation, I usually kind of share those moments that I didn't know what to do, but I just knew I wanted to become a doctor, and that college was one of the pathways that would get me there. One of the, I think the coolest things about college was, when you get the opportunity, especially as a pre-health major, when they give you those opportunities to go into like different simulation rooms and things like that. I always think about just really cool experiences that I had, possibly labs, or there's just even really cool professors that, were really nice to me. Or, I think about the college professor that brought us donuts. Sometimes I'll just highlight those little things. I always just truly believe that it differs depending on the student. If I think back to my own experience, the first college campus that I really remember going to was just a fifth grade elementary trip. We went to this beautiful campus, and I was actually thrilled with the food. The endless buffet of I could get as many hamburgers and hot dogs as I want, and then they have free ice cream. Just kind of sparked that interest. And then, believe it or not, I actually held on to that all the way up through my senior year, as that just being my dream university. I was a kid motivated by food, and just the really cool cafeteria options was enough to hold on to me. So I just think it depends on, the student and the family, but there's just so many different ways that you can pull a little nugget of possibly your own experience, or maybe a shared experience of someone from like a colleague, um, another family member, just to kind of put a little nugget of college is really cool.
I love that. When we talk about our college visits, when going inside of schools for workshops, and I'm like, "Oh, you guys went to University of Texas Arlington the other day. How'd you like it?" The first thing almost always they say is that they got to eat at the cafeteria, and they're talking about what they had at the cafeteria, and they have little cards that were like credit cards, and they just like swiped and they got their food. So that's definitely what I've heard is one of the highlights of the visits. And even for
Yes.
myself, going to the science center, all those little moments, like you said, that hands-on, where somebody came inside of the school and they had like a simulator or something that I could really like get my hands on and just spark my curiosity for learning kind of as a whole. As soon as
Mhm.
somebody's like, "Oh, college is where you can learn more," and I'm like, "Oh, wait, so you mean that I'm going to get to kind of explore all these other ideas and get my hands kind of inside of things to really get out there and get curious?" So definitely kind of like you in that sense, but I agree, it does depend on the student. So you kind of have to find what their interest is and kind of what catches
Mhm.
them, and kind of use that to kind of let them explore their curiosities kind of a bit more. So when we're
Absolutely.
thinking of hands-on and making things a bit more tangible, I always think about like creative tools that kind of make college concepts, like I said, accessible for children. Like one idea is I did with my nieces and nephews is a college jar, which was literally, I gave them a jar, a mason jar. I let them decorate it in whatever way they want. And we kind of went together and made little strips of paper that had fun questions like, what do people study in college? Or draw your dream dorm room, or what would you get for your dorm? And I would have them like, they'd shake it up and randomly just pull something, especially if they were bored sitting around, I don't know, and they're talking about nonsense. So I'm like, let's talk about something a bit more constructive. Go get the jar. And they would get the jar. And then after a while, as soon as I came over, or as soon as I got on the phone or FaceTiming, they're grabbing the jar. And then somehow the jar's slips of paper never lessened. So they were actually adding questions. And when I asked my niece about it one day, she said that, yeah, whenever she was like in school and they like kind of mentioned something she was curious about, they would always just stuff it in the drawer, because apparently I became the person that you talk to about stuff. So whenever they had questions or ideas, and I love that it transformed from not just college, but it transformed to careers, futures, kind of as a whole. So when we're thinking of that, are there any like simple, fun ways that you think families can introduce the idea of college at home?
Absolutely. They can think of it just as something as novice as seeing your student always dress up. So, if they've got the dress up kit, and you notice that every single time they're grabbing the white coat, they're grabbing that stethoscope and they want to give you a shot. It's a simple way, to kind of ask them, so what do you think you want to do? It could be that they want to be a princess or a mermaid, if I'm thinking, about my own needs. It could be that they then are saying that they want to be a doctor. And so you can highlight ways that they're already just naturally playing. just naturally, truly being a kid, just kind of starting as the adult to see and kind of observe what do they normally gravitate to, what really captures their attention, and then how can I pivot that for your student that's always interested in Legos. Possibly it's maybe they want to build them up really tall or they're creating these really cool structures. Maybe seeing, do you know about architecture? So one, asking questions. I think our students have a lot more access to information than we even sometimes realize. I think about it all the time. I'm like, my 3-year-old niece is playing with a tablet and she knows how to fix it. And I'm just like, wow, I don't think I knew that. So, just taking those opportunities to really hone in on how to continue that conversation further. If you have a student that's really interested in sports, although them themselves like may not become an athlete, March Madness, I always like to say, is a really great way because you get the opportunity to hear about large schools, even some of we consider them to be underdogs, so the smaller schools that we're not as familiar with. A great way to just kind of spark the interest. What's your favorite team? Why is that your favorite team? And then maybe utilizing that. It's just a little avenue for them to look a little bit deeper into college, either specifically that college or possibly a different type of career field.
That is an idea that I never thought of, but you are so right. You're using things like sports because, again, whenever they're talking about college, a lot of students are interested in sports or
Mhm.
sports teams, and they know them through the sports teams. So I never thought of that as a way to kind of begin those conversations about the colleges or the teams that they like, or just using it to kind of bring up a random fact. Like me, I'd use it sometimes in the classroom because I'm originally from Ohio. So, when they see oh, you're a Texas A&M. Oh, I was like, I love the Aggies. I was like, but the Buckeyes are close to my heart. And they're like, the Buckeyes. I'm like, yeah, the Ohio State University. You don't know those Buckeyes? And it was especially great because right after the big game between A&M and them, we had a workshop. And apparently in the beginning, I may or may not have been public enemy number one because they had recently played Ohio State University. So I'm gonna use that myself in the future, is using sports more and March Madness specifically, March Madness or even the Super Bowl, because they pay attention to where those players went to college. So
Absolutely.
yeah, even that, I didn't think about that. That's a great idea to kind of start those conversations. So, look, why do you like that college? Or do you know that college? And I mean, we as parents also have our own information systems. You can grab your phone while they say they like this college and kind of pull it up, something about it, ask, that is a pretty great medical college. Or have you seen their electrical engineering program? You remember you liked putting things together? Remember you always used to take apart the vacuum and put it back together?
Exactly.
So that's a great like kind of segue to college conversations, is using sports, especially big events like March Madness and the things like that. So when thinking about, you made me think of something when you mentioned your daughter has a tablet. I've mentioned that a lot of times they have access to a lot of things that I definitely didn't have. And even when you thought of universities or you saw it on TV, it was hard to kind of imagine the university itself. And being in DFW, I'm always, like talking about all different kinds of colleges, but I mention all things that I see at A&M when I go to A&M, and they're always asking questions about A&M because it's not somewhere that's necessarily as easily accessible from DFW.
Mhm.
So I've always suggested them like, you guys got YouTube for days. I tell them I call it YouTube University. So I say go to YouTube University and look up campus tours and things of that nature. I was like, you guys can always see tours. You could see all kinds of things. They'll get up close and personal with the gymnasium and the fields. Because when you go on a tour, you might not get to go on the field, but you can look up YouTube and maybe somebody did, a tour of the field or things like that. So are there any other tools other than like I think of YouTube? That may just be a sign of my age. But are there any things that you could think of? Because you deal a lot with like recruitment and colleges and tours where parents can maybe sit with their, children and kind of see different tours and kind of tour campuses together other than YouTube. Anything you could think of?
Absolutely. And so one of the things I believe that we all realize, post 2020 is how do we make sure that the students that either cannot physically come or just don't have the opportunity or time to make it all the way to our campus, how do we highlight all of those great things? And so Amazon Prime actually came out with the college tour series, and it's not just Texas schools. I find myself, because now I'm just in the field and I've been doing this for close to 10 years. I just get fascinated, but I initially turned it on to watch A&Ms because why not? It is A&M. But then I found out that there were, schools in Florida, there were schools in Mississippi, there were just so many other universities. And it was a really great highlight of what that university offers and to see it from a really fun perspective. And we think about it, almost all of us have Amazon or Amazon Prime. We utilize it in some capacity and it's free, with the Prime access. So if you have it and your students are already watching, everything else, all the other shows that are on there, think about incorporating the college tour. Even if you just have it playing in the background, we're kind of that family where sometimes we just want background stuff with the captions. It's really cool pictures and we're like, hey, wait, turn up the volume. That's a really cool thing. What is that? And so then we find ourselves now we're just watching it, where we thought we just wanted it in the background. Now we're fully watching it and kind of engrossed in that experience and just exposure to something else without having to make that long drive. You can watch it from the comfort of your living room or their tablet. And just kind of, see if it sparks any interest, either for the student or possibly even just for the parent.
That's great. And you said it's Amazon Prime. Is it like through, like watching it on a TV, or do they go like online to like Amazon.com and like access the Prime? Do you know how a bit more about how they would access that or where they go to find those on Amazon?
Yeah, so it's under the Prime Video. It's just one of those series. So I believe it's a series specific to Amazon. But it's under the Prime Video section. So if you're on Amazon, just go to Prime Video. Now, if you don't have Prime Video, you'd have to get it to gain access. But if you do have Prime and access to the Prime Video features of it, then yes, it just shows up there and they've got seasons on there. And it's just, again, it's all kinds of universities. You can find yourself, it would take you well over a week, to watch them pretty much around the clock. And each of them are about an hour long, give or take. So it's a really good in-depth experience. They talk about the residence life, their on-campus resources. And so if you are a family that's thinking, especially if you maybe have a child that, needs accommodations or this is going to be extremely important to you, later on down the line. It highlights a lot of that as well.
There's even all kinds of little nuggets. I'm gonna have to add that to my. I even access Prime on like I call my Xbox my entertainment system, or even
Okay.
like on TVs. You always like log into your Amazon. So I'm gonna have to add like that series kind of to my list on Amazon because I didn't know about that. And because I always come in teachers and parents, especially when I'm tabling, they're always asking for resources. So I'm gonna add that little nugget too onto there. So I'm glad we had this conversation today. So I can get these nuggets. Now, as students get a bit older, especially towards middle school, they can handle kind of those more nuanced conversations. So when we're thinking of middle schoolers, what kinds of conversations can families start about majors, scholarships, college pass, kind of getting to those more smaller, fine-tuned details in discussing college, kind of without adding additional pressure? Because I know at times, especially when I'm speaking to middle schoolers, everybody's, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to do when you grow up? Or what are you going to do to college? And it kind of gets a bit overwhelming for them. So
Mhm.
do you know any ways that families or parents can kind of start conversations about majors, scholarships, and college paths that don't add kind of all that additional pressure?
Yeah, so one of the first ways, and it's something that on the higher ed side, we are encouraging our students to think about, is to move away from a major focus versus and shift to more of what we call the career focus. So do we have a dream career? Because what we find is a lot of students can tell us the career field that they want to pursue. Now, whether they do, later on down the line, that's not our jobs. Our jobs are, just to kind of support in this moment. But when they highlight a career, then that is actually a better opportunity to introduce majors because there is not one specific major that can only get you to one degree.
Just because someone pursues a BS in engineering doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to end up specifically becoming an engineer. They can still go into a lot of other different fields. And so sometimes by just asking, so what would you want to do? We get the person that will list out their majors. Now, if you are working with, or if specifically your student is like, I don't know. Then I always shift. So what subjects come really easy for you? Which subjects do you really enjoy? A lot of middle schools, and specifically, I think it's more so on the high school side, they have endorsements. And so, we'll have eighth graders that are now having to sign up for high school classes, and they're getting ready to possibly have to select an endorsement. And so those endorsements allow for them to be exposed to specialties, within high school. So it could be something pre-health related. A lot of schools have like a law or business focus. So I tend to ask the younger students just what seems interesting to you. Is it that I want to be my own boss? Then that's okay as like that's great. So I believe it's just taking the pressure off of it. Let's not tie money to it eventually. It's something that eventually does need to come up. But at the middle school level, just kind of keeping it up with what do you want to do? And then helping them to navigate what that path looks like. So, if you have your student that is a master debater, either with you or in the classroom, and that they'd be really great, possibly in their and they express, interest in law, then maybe that's an opportunity for both of you all to look up. So how do we get to the path of law school? What are the degrees required? What are the most common degrees? And of course, now with technology, there's just so many like different maps that they've now created where it makes it really easy for you. Someone can give you the website can give you different, infographics. They'll say you're going to do this amount of time here, this amount of time here, test needed, things like that. But I just think keeping it light, asking about subject interest, careers. Are they somebody that just wants to make money? Just kind of, if the parents tend to keep it light, then usually the students don't mind following suit.
Because that makes a lot of sense. It's kind of just kind of, we'll call it emotionally guiding them in a sense. Like you said, if you don't kind of take it, not taking it seriously, but if you don't approach it in that harsh of a manner, I can see how that could also guide them to do the same. And that's a great way to phrase it. Like, what do you like doing? Or what subject comes easy to you? Because I don't know about you, but I don't know has to be one of the number one responses for students kindergarten through eighth grade for anything that seems like the slightest amount of pressure, or they're like, oh, I don't know. And it's kind of, you got to do a little digging, or you got to kind of coax it out of them a little bit, or at least, like I said, make the conversation a bit more approachable. Then they seem
Mhm.
to kind of jump in and jump with that. So I could definitely see how that could help. And now I'm thinking about myself, when we do a workshop, we actually have to do an interest mapping one where we explore their interests, and then
Mhm.
we try to connect it to a career. And then we do explore like what kind of majors might you need for that career. And you made a great point of, well, just because you had that major, there's a lot of different things you could do with it. Because I've gotten that
Mhm.
question before from them where they're like, well, this one has this major is the same as that career and that major. And then I do have to explain to them, say you're going to be a doctor. There's a lot of different things you could do as a doctor. You can be a doctor for this. You have different specialties once you're a doctor, or even engineering. You could start with engineering and then kind of branch off from there on what type of engineering you're wanting to do. So I think that's a great way to go. Start with that career and
Mhm.
what exactly they're wanting to do. Because I believe also, as adults and caregivers and parents, and of course glorified aunties, you have a bit more knowledge of connecting those dots. You might have a name for
Mhm.
something that they don't at that time. So if you're
Correct.
asking those questions about what you're interested in, or a person that does this, and they're like, well, I don't know. Like a lot of times we'll be talking about cosmetology school, and I'm like, you mean an esthetician? They're like,
Uh-huh.
what? And then so like I'll spell it for them, we write it down, and then they'll pull it up on their phones or on their on their Chromebooks and pull up esthetician. They're like, yes, yes, okay, yes, that's exactly
Exactly.
what it was. I was like, okay, girl, I told you, you just had to explain to me and describe it,
Mhm.
and then I could try to help you find the name for it. And I'm the queen of I don't know, but let's find out together. And we've
Ex-
definitely, especially with the power of AI now, you can put it in Google, ask it a question in the AI, you can describe something, and maybe they'll even give you ideas of careers. Like if you describe something you like to do, what kind of careers could I have for this? So that's definitely a great way to start with. Like I said, thinking of what they like to do.
Mhm.
Now, when we're talking about AI and things online, because let's face it, it's 2025. That's what
It is.
a lot of it is, it's online. So what I've experienced like in schools is you have Khan Academy, they use Khan Academy for tutoring, but it also does let you explore careers in colleges through Khan Academy, as well as bigfuture.com. You can
Yeah.
explore colleges, majors, you can even create an account if you're 13 or older. They can create accounts and save the information on there, as well as uvisit.com. I've known that
Mhm.
for visiting campuses. Are there any like online tools or apps that you could think of that you could recommend for early exploration or even just like starting those conversations of college and careers and things of that nature?
I mean, you really did list out a lot of the great options. I would even say this one that feels like I like to say the easiest answer, but I always like to tell people you could just actually go to that university's website. A lot of the universities themselves actually have resources built into it because we do understand that we can't just now start this conversation in ninth or 10th grade. We now on the higher ed side have truly learned that this is a continuing conversation that we need to start honestly as early as possible, as soon as your student can kind of comprehend what school looks like. We have to continue to massage this in order for students to really be receptive to it and to fully engage in it. And so even going to that university's website and seeing, are there any youth camps that they offer? Do they have any early outreach, like booklets or coloring books? I know for A&M, we made a coloring book. We actually have, some like physical, like just like little reading books. And so even though, working with the student that's just, you're thinking, well, we're just working on reading because, it's a part of, they need to read so many books. It can also at the same time be exposing them to university and college life at the exact same time. So I would say don't shy away. I'm the queen of Google and AI. That's the first thing I'm gonna do. I'm like, people are like, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know either. Let's Google it.
And
But don't shy away from the university's websites. They probably have quite a bit of resources.
thank you. That's what I wanted to do, a shameless plug. We definitely, with Office for Youth Engagement, if you go to our website, if you go to youth engagement at tmu.edu, we actually have an Aggie Camp Finder on there, which is like a fully searchable database where you can select the grade that you're in, the type of camp that you're looking for. Do you want it to be an overnight camp? Do you want it to be a week-long camp? So our Aggie Camp Finder actually, like I said, it does exactly that, where it helps you find those camps. So specifically for A&M, we have a camp finder. And like I said, that's a good idea. I'm sure there's other universities that may have the same things if you're not able to, go the distance, maybe a bit more locally, especially in DFW, there's a number of colleges. So if they're not able to get out, that's actually a great suggestion, is just go to their website. I'm sure you could put TAMU and then summer camp in Google and it will probably pull it up. It'll probably pull up a camp finder, but you can do that with any university. If you're, like I said, you're not able to get to A&M, we have our leaders, partner campuses, but you can do that with any college in and of itself. So that's actually a really good idea, is to, like I said, don't shy away from Google or just going to those college sites themselves. That's great. Now, I do want to make sure that it's important to make that note that our conversations don't feel like college is the only path, because of course there are, my dad always used to say there's different strokes for different folks.
Mhm.
So some it fits for some it doesn't. So I guess maybe a way, instead of saying you don't have to go to college to be successful, you can try, there are different options after high school and let's explore them. And maybe that does lead to college. Or even if it doesn't lead to college, there's some, when we're doing our workshops in classrooms, they're like, I want to have my own business. I don't need to go to college. And I'm like, well, I mean, you could get a business degree, but if college really isn't for you, I was telling them, you could take classes out of college and it doesn't have to be for a degree, or they have 2-year degrees or certificate programs. I was like, maybe you can get a little bit of experience in advertising and marketing so you can check those trends and know who's buying what and know what services to provide. I even tell even graphic design. You want to somebody wanted to make body butters. I said, okay, well, you can make some labels for those body butters, learn about, graphic design, make your labels. You can make all kinds of things. Your website, maybe web design will help you build a website. Like I said, it's 2025. You got to put those things online a lot of times, and you're going to have to
Mhm.
be able to understand how that works. I was like, so that would actually maybe take education. I was like, so maybe not a 4-year degree, but it might take a 2-year degree, maybe a certificate, or maybe just some classes at the local, university or trade school. So when we're thinking of college as one option among many, including trades, the military, and certificate programs, do you have any suggestions or maybe conversation starters on how families can talk about college as one of many options and kind of discuss those different options with their students?
Yeah, of course. And so that's actually a very, I like to say, a common misconception that, people have, that when we walk in the room, that we only want you to go to a 4-year school, and we believe that A&M is the only option. And that's never the case, by far. And it's one of the things that we, and I can say as a profession, kind of advocate for, although many of us recruit for a very specific place or a specific, university or program. Our number one goal is actually just for your student to have a post-secondary option. We understand that when they graduate at 17 or 18, by age, they may be an adult, but we all know truly as adults that are living life now that we're really not grown yet. We think that we're grown, but we're really not grown yet. And so it's hard, sometimes, to put that pressure on them. And I know that, when we're thinking about the climate of the world and just education, and it can be hard to just imagine what is it going to look like years from now. Is it going to be easier, harder? Is it going to be more competitive? All of those things. The first recommendation I have for families is number one is just to kind of put it out there, even if as a parent you're just wanting to share what your goals are. I can, again, I mentioned it earlier. I was a first generation college student. My mother nor my father had gone to school. My father went straight to the military. Um, and so he's a veteran, and he still yet decided, like, college isn't for me. He's great with his hands. Once he retired from the military, he just went into normal civilian life, and he's just a worker, but he's great with his hands. I can't say that. And if you ask me, I believe that my dad is the smartest man in the world because he can fix things without a manual. And that's something, that he's focused more on, like a trade portion of it. Same thing with many of, his siblings. They all more so have a trade rather than, traditional college. One of the things that I think helped spark my interest was honestly my parents being forthcoming with their experience and just kind of sharing, like, hey, not having a college degree kind of held me back in the workplace. It made me be passed over for promotions. And so that kind of naturally sparked this desire for me. Like, oh, I was like, oh, well, I don't want to be like the most qualified. And then someone say I just needed a degree. And then because I didn't have my degree, they didn't, they're going to pass me over. So even just, I'll say those like little bits of truth without feeling like tons of pressure did kind of help spark this, okay, maybe I want to do it. Also, what a lot of schools now have is just what we call that CCMR, so College and Career Military Readiness. And so the goal is just to get your students somewhere. And so we would hope, it's a 4-year school, but the 2-year community colleges or trade schools offer fantastic programs that can get your students still that education, but get them into the workforce a lot faster. For some students, they do need to go straight into the military, either because they need that level of structure or possibly they want to pursue college, but just finances are, families can be honest, hey, finances are going to be something that factors into this process. So you need to go, earn that free education by enrolling or enlisting into the military, and then later on, pursuing college if that's what you decide. But overall, I think the biggest tip is just whatever the plan is, put it on paper. A plan is not a plan unless it's on paper. If it's just in your head, it's a dream, and nobody knows how to work towards a dream. And so once you put it on paper, just be open to the fact that it's okay to have a plan A, plan B. You can have a plan G. It's okay to have multiple different plans and then just work those plans as life continues on.
I like that. Plan's not a plan until it's on paper. And I like that also where you said if I think it's very, at least personal opinion, good and kind of sets that transparency of parents just setting what their expectation is instead of I expect you to be successful or I expect you to go to college, those hard goals, just saying, listen, honestly, I just want you to have a plan and kind of just being open about what you're wanting from them or what you're expecting in a more general sense of, I just want you to have a plan and I'm just trying to help you figure out what that plan is because you need to have
Mhm.
a plan, on what you're doing something and I'll support you kind of on whatever it is you're choosing to do. But let's just start talking about that so we can start, working on it now. I mean, I've met some students he cuts his friend's hair. He loves being a barber. He wants to have his own shop and he cuts his friend's hairs in the garage, not condoning it or licensing that action or anything, but they're jumping in there and kind of getting that. I've seen some kids that kind of want to start their own lawn care business. So, like you said, your dad just jumping and being great with his hands. Listen, I have an entire doctoral degree, so I definitely have the smarts, but I like to say there's different types of intelligence. Because please do not ask me about the engine or the transmission or anything like that. I hate hanging curtains, even I could do it, but the stress of hanging curtains, are they straight or putting things
Yes.
together, the myth of IKEA furniture. So, like you said, it's definitely different strokes for different folks. And if you're good with your hands, I say, like I said, explore that option is a great option. And those, like I said, the CCMRs or the CTEs, career and technical educations
Yeah.
that they call them, or PTech, they like to call them the pathways that they have at most high schools, as well as junior highs, will have all those different pathways. So again, like you said, it's good to speak about that as early as possible, just so they could take advantage of those opportunities. Because you don't want to just say, well, you need to do something and push them into doing it because
Mhm.
they never explored it ahead of time. They're going to jump in and be 2 years into a program that is nothing like what they're wanting to do. And they kind of missed an opportunity to not only do what they want to do, but also make it successful. Because I at least have seen a lot of adults that they do what they need to do because you need to make money, you got to take care of your family. You don't always enjoy what you're doing. Luckily,
Mhm.
I do. So it's kind of, I like to call it a privilege to actually be able to do what you do and actually enjoy what you do and do it as a living. And I definitely know that would take, and the best options to have that as an outcome is to talk about and have those conversations early so they could take advantage of those early colleges, the PTech, the
Mhm.
CCR, all those career tech classes, and as well as career exploration. AVID is a great
Yes.
program. A lot of people don't know about the AVID in junior highs because a lot of times you have to sign up for it. Or there's an application process and do interviews. So the moment they go into junior high, they have AVID classes, which will teach them all kinds of things about career exploration. They explore colleges. That's where they take a lot of campus tours to different
Mhm.
colleges. They'll work on career portfolios. So they do a lot of different things in AVID. So even just finding your school's AVID teacher or a counselor and having your child join that program, I think could be definitely a great start to start having those conversations. Now,
Absolutely.
you mentioned being a first generation college student, and of course, me as well as a first generation college student. And I do know definitely for my parents and some of the parents I talked to, it seems very overwhelming or out of reach, especially for your young parents and you know the cost of any kind of post-secondary education. And a lot of times parents have those financial concerns. So do you have any suggestions or comments or tips about kind of how to ensure that college conversations don't feel overwhelming or out of reach for those kids and parents with financial concerns, that they're able to still explore openly and not necessarily have to focus too much. Like you said, eventually money, is important, but not letting that like overwhelm and overshadow that conversation and exploration.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of different, obviously, facets. If you are a parent of a student that is still quite young, and by quite young, we mean, very well into elementary school, then one of the things that we encourage is starting some version of college savings. Now, I am realistic. And I say this as a parent of a sophomore, I can't say, like, oh, wow, we're, spending thousands and thousands of dollars each month into the college savings. But I do know that every little bit helps. And so even if it's that we only have a couple thousand saved, it is still a couple thousand that adds up and will take away at least a little bit of stress from you. So that's the first part. If you have the opportunity, and you can fit it in, and even if you can't at the moment fit it in, put it on a list of things to work towards. Is at some point just kind of start saving for college. Also, it's to know that there is no perfect path, that there are lots of affordable options. When someone graduates from a four-year university, there's no introduction. I always like to joke, and I'm like, there's no introduction that's like started off at Dallas College, then later transition to Texas A&M University. No one knows. You're just going to be whatever, institution you're ultimately attending. And so knowing that there are still very much so like local resources that can still help your student get towards their ultimate goal of attending, whatever university that is, but saving money along the way. Our students that attend community college first and then go to a four-year institution save quite a bit of money. It does take some planning, and that is actually planning that we assist with. So part of my job is just to help students find their pathway to A&M. I always hope it's a freshman because that's primarily, who I work with. But if it's not, an A&M student is still an A&M student in our mind. And so then we, can give them pathways to navigate towards that. A lot of your students will have the opportunity, and a lot of districts across, especially the Metroplex, offer like a dual enrollment or dual credit. And so the district is already taking on the cost of your students' college classes. All you have to do is tell the counseling staff, hey, we want to start taking these classes. Some students will end up with an associate's degree. And so they pretty much almost knocked out, 2 years of that four-year degree program. And that's something that is easy to sign up for. For the most part, it's just making good grades throughout, middle school, and signing up for it whenever that opportunity comes. So make sure, as a parent, you guys are paying attention to it. But then also being transparent. I hated when my mother did this, but whenever we would start talking about college, she would call, and the first thing she would say is, we have no idea what we're doing. And I'm just like cringing on the phone, like, why are you telling these people we don't know what we're doing? But at the same level, that level of transparency, it was funny because if I would call, I wouldn't say that I didn't know what I was doing. And so I would get one answer, but then the way that she was kind of transparent and saying like, hey, I want to rip off the veil. We have no idea what we're doing. The staff member all of a sudden was like listing out all these different resources, and they were like, I can email you links. And I was just like, yeah, mom, that lady didn't tell me any of that. And so some of it is just, don't be ashamed of it, because again, many of us, sometimes we, are like it today and we're wearing it as a badge of honor, but we're not ashamed. And who knows, the person that you may be speaking with, while they may be a doctor now, at one point in time, they were the very first person in their family to go to college. And so, never let or allow our titles to make you think that we weren't in the same shoe and in the exact same shoes, that you are. And I'm always happy to just point out resources. A lot of them are now implemented at the district level, but I know many universities as well. We get very passionate about trying to help people find scholarships, whether that's at our local, specifically at our university, or even outside resources. So just rip off that Band-Aid, tell us you don't know what you're doing, and allow us to do our jobs. And like you mentioned, just we're very passionate about what we do. I don't think anyone gets an education saying, I'm going to make all this money. A lot of it specifically is just passion work, and knowing that education can open doors, or at least post-secondary options can open doors and possibly change generations to come.
It's awesome. So what I'm hearing is transparency is the key. And I guess, and I have for sure heard that, parents say I could see the look on their face. Honestly, I do not know, or I don't know what the difference is. And any person that knows me, I know gets tired of hearing it, because all I say is, look, like my dad said, you don't know what you don't know. I was like, so let's start knowing, and kind of working with them and seeing where the gaps are, what do they need filled in, And then, like you said, always giving them that resource of, because you can't have that full conversation. You can never get everything you need in. And sometimes it's just difficult navigating. So having those resources are for sure key. So I guess that's a good idea, is that transparency. And I'm remember to use that word specifically when I'm speaking with parents, like just honestly be transparent. There's no shame. Because like you said, I'm definitely guilty. I wasn't sure if it was college I wanted to do after. So I certainly went to a community college. Shout out to Lorain County Community College to get my 2-year degree. And after that, not only did I like have a better handle of college and like knew that I could do it and had that confidence, I also had a better idea of what I wanted to do. So if they're able to do that in high school, I think that that's amazing to be able to leave high school and then they can kind of get that early start on going, I know what I want to do, I know where I want to go. And not only that, I know that I can handle it. So let's get going and let's get moving and cranking that out. So I definitely like that idea of transparency. Now, since you mentioned a lot about first generation, it's definitely something, and not knowing things. So a lot of times, at least usually only in movies, I'll hear the response of a child saying to a parent who didn't go to college, well, why do I have to go to college? You didn't go to college. So just in case, put it out there, in case somebody gets that response, or parents don't feel like they can convince their student that it's the best option, whether it's college or trade school, having some type of post-secondary plan, what would you say to parents who didn't attend college themselves but want their child to consider it? How could they have that conversation? Or I don't want to say what retort can they have, but what can they say, or how could they explain that even though they didn't do it, that it's the best thing that for them and that they could do?
Yeah, so I think you can also, parents can lean on their network. So for my mom, throughout our process, I know she was talking to me until she was blue in the face, but it was my mom, and I was like, "You don't know what you're talking about." And so she would just, all right. And so I remember her having, really great bosses or really great colleagues. And I think she would be transparent with them behind the scenes. Like, my daughter is just not listening to a word that I said. And so, when you go up to the office or I would, sometimes they would invite me to lunch and I'm really just tagging along because I don't have any money. So I'm going to lunch with them really. But they would just kind of spark that conversation about like, well, what do you want to do after high school? And I'm like, I don't know, I think I want to go here. And so some of them was just sharing like their own perspective, because my parent didn't have their own college experience to give me. That was a gap, but instead they actually just implanted people that did have that experience to be able to share. And so, when someone was able to say like, oh, I had a really great time, and then they kind of list out some experiences, even like in the young middle school mind, I'm like, okay, I think I kind of want to do that. Now there's so many different TV shows. My daughter watches a lot of the TikTok day in the lives type thing. But those are just even great ways. They kind of spark interest. But I would say at some point, it does become, I'll say, as a parent, we get very frustrated in the process because we're like, education, you need it. But at the same time, you kind of have to allow them to get to that path on their own. You think about it, they've been doing school a long time. Now, granted, when we think K through 12, and I can again say this now as both a parent and as being on the other side, why can't you keep going? I'm paying for it still, so why can't you keep going to school? But it's something that they have to get to, because at the same time, we see students on our college campuses that don't want to be there, that we can tell that they are only there because their parents or their family has made them go, and they make it a point to let us know that they don't want to be there. And so we don't want them there either, mainly because it's detrimental to them. For some of them, they're going to have this beautiful awakening, and it'll shift and they'll be able to, just handle it and get their work done. For others of them, it's a little detrimental because now it's a terrible grade, on their college transcript, and they could possibly lose their financial aid that they've received. So there are some adverse effects to it when the student just really doesn't. So I would say, although we know truly what education can do, be open
So that way your student, and again, transparent. So that way your student can feel like they can come to you with their ideas, and then try to make it a dialogue. If you don't naturally, if they give you an answer and you don't naturally understand it, like, or you can't comprehend it, keep asking questions. They're young, so hormones or whatever they do now, somehow they just, I don't know. But I always, remind my daughter, I don't know is not an answer. There's some feeling behind there. And so is it that you're nervous or you're concerned? And what you may find is their whole reason why they don't want to leave and go to college is because they just don't want to leave you. And so then you'll better know how to cater that conversation about, well, maybe I could come visit you. So you can, I think, really kind of get closer to the root of either that concern or truly whatever that I don't want to is, to better be able to address it to kind of meet the need. But try not to fight it too hard, because your students like to rebel, and they will.
Well, that's a great tip to definitely. I've heard that once or twice, that I've been telling that same exact thing, but somehow you said it and it just apparently makes all the sense in the world. And I always say, well, I guess they just had to hear it from somebody else. So leaning on your support and kind of leaning on your network, and I like to call it your tribe, I could definitely see how that could help, because like you said, sometimes it's climbing a mountain when you're trying to have those conversations and you get frustrated. So just like the old WWE, kind of just tag them in, have them have those conversations with them. So that's definitely some great advice for that exposure. But I don't want to take much more of your time, but I want to thank everybody for joining us and kind of encouraging that academic curiosity. So just remember that it doesn't require perfection, just presence. And with those small everyday moments, we can kind of help our kids imagine a future full of possibilities. But I personally want to give a special thank you to our guest, Tierra Tomba, for sharing her insight and expertise, because your thoughtful guidance, it definitely makes those conversations more meaningful for all of us. And I certainly got a couple nuggets and some tidbits to take with me that I'll certainly be using in the future. But for everybody else, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell at the bottom so you don't miss workshop 2, where we're going to be discussing career paths beyond college and kind of discussing those trades. So let's keep planting those seeds of possibility together.